McShane, welcome to Permastoked. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Right
Sitting
on.
here watching lots of snow outside today.
And now, where are you again? You're somewhere near Kingston, correct?
Yeah, I'm about 20 minutes north of Kingston, Ontario, in a place called my town. I don't even have a town. Our address is Perth Road. Um, so there's a little tiny hamlet just down the road from us. So
Yeah, so I was looking up on Google Maps. Yeah, it was weird. So the town's name is Perth Road.
yes.
So you live on a road in Perth Road. That must be confusing for the mailman or
Yeah,
person.
people get pretty confused when I have to give my addresses. Like, I live on Shales Road in Perth Road. And they're like, where? In Perth? It's like, no, it's this big
Yeah.
historical road. And sometimes we just drop village in there to make it uncomplicated.
Okay, cool. And so you're living there, but Kingston is the headquarters of Paddle Canada, correct?
Yes. And I think that's just by default. My predecessor happened to live in Kingston. So that became headquarters for the last 10 years.
Okay.
And I happen to live in the Kingston area, so it still remains there.
It worked
Currently,
out.
it's my dining room table, and it has been for the better part of this year.
Okay, so there's really no official ties to Paddle Canada being in Kingston for any particular reason. It's just sort of happens to be wherever the president is, or sorry, the ED.
Yeah, so years and years ago, they had a builder. We had a building in Merrickville, which is closer to the Ottawa area.
Okay.
And then I think eventually that building got sold. And then soon after that, I think my predecessor started, and he lived in Kingston at the time. So I think our roots have always been in sort of southeastern Ontario. But yeah.
Okay, now a few weeks ago, I was speaking with Dom Domick. He's the executive director of Surf Canada, and you are the executive director of Paddle Canada. And the interesting thing me and Dom were joking about was the optics of, having a website and all the fancy pictures and, the emails. Like the optics of that seem like this big well-oiled machine, this operation where there's probably a bunch of people behind the computers doing things, but really at the end of the day, it's him and a few select people who are usually hired out. And I know anytime I ever email Paddle Canada, I'm getting a response from either yourself or from, is it pronounced Paulo?
Paulo.
Paulo? Okay, and Paulo.
Paulo, yeah.
So is Paddle Canada a big skyscraper with 1 million people, or is it like a little room in the back with 2 people?
It's more like the little room in the back with 2 people from an
Yeah.
operational standpoint. So we have
Okay.
a staff of 2.5 at
Wow.
this time. So myself, Paulo sort of runs member services and administration, and then we have a part-time bookkeeper.
Oh, okay. So a small team, but now across the country, what is your reach in terms of the number of instructors and board members and all those kind of things?
So ideally, we would have one director representing each province and territory. So we have 12 right now, in that Ontario is not, or sorry, the Northwest Territories is not represented, and Nunavut is not represented. And that those are just vacant seats. We don't have anybody sitting in those right now, but all other provinces and the Yukon are represented with a board of directors. And then we have committees and numerous volunteers that sit on those committees. And then the directors are all volunteers. So yeah, there's only 2 of us that are paid staff, sort of taking care of the day-to-day
Yeah.
and representing the organization, if you will. And then I think right now we have I think normal years we're sitting at about 2,000 instructors.
Wow.
A little less this past year. It just in that if an instructor member decided that they weren't going to be teaching or whatever, they might not have renewed their membership. So in 2020, our membership from an instructor standpoint was down a little bit, but I think that was a lot to do with, COVID and people not teaching courses and stuff like that. But we're projecting that will pick up and we'll have more members on, be it previous members that are going to renew and hopefully get out and teach this year, and hopefully some new instructors will join the ranks.
Yeah, absolutely. So now out of those 2,000 instructors, do you have an idea as to what their disciplines are?
I think we're probably higher in canoe. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now. That's definitely Paulo's. He does all of our reporting and that. But we tend to be heavier in canoe because it is such a bigger program that we have. And then kayaking, I think, is pretty high. And SUP would follow that. And then we have our camping discipline, which is a relatively new sort of program on its own. And river kayak, which isn't a huge percentage right now.
Yeah. I anticipated that SUP would be under canoeing and kayaking though. It's
a newer program too.
Yeah. So Paddle Canada, so maybe we'll back up a little bit and maybe you can tell us a little bit about Paddle Canada and its history, and maybe lead us into what the mission of Paddle Canada is, so the folks listening who maybe aren't familiar can get a better understanding.
So our history, what's kind of interesting about it is we're celebrating 50 years this year. 2021 marks 50 years that we've been conceived, if you will. And some people will talk about 72 being our birth date, if you will. So in 1971, we came together, and it was in 72 that we were incorporated. And it's interesting, a few months ago, John Eberhard, so we were there are two gentlemen that are considered our founders, if you will, and John is still alive, and he reached out to me and actually drove down and visited me here at our head office back in the summer. And I got to take him through we still have a fair number of archives and our minutes and some really interesting photographs of paddlers back in the 70s.
Yeah.
So our roots actually started with him in that he was planning a canoe trip in northern Saskatchewan, I believe it was. And he just couldn't find, they didn't have internet back then, so he just couldn't find a lot of resources about how to plan this trip, which sort of led him to realize that there wasn't necessarily any kind of an organization that was tracking canoe routes, or he just couldn't find resources. So we thought, well, maybe I should create something.
Yeah. So
him and his buddy Ron got together and they sort of conceptualized this organization that they essentially just wanted to encourage and promote recreational canoeing. And decided they wanted it to be national, and found people from across the country to sort of come together and create that first board of directors. And I think one of their original plans was to map out routes and to produce a publication that was going to offer canoe routes and sort of how to. And then I think over time it evolved into creating a program that people could teach from, so creating standards and creating an educational program. And then of course things just kept evolving, and at some point in time added kayaking into the mix and stand-up paddling, and changed the name from the Canadian Recreational Canoeing Association to Paddle Canada to reflect that there were more than just canoes going on.
Yeah, and it continues to grow. Paddle sports, I'm sure you anticipate that the courses could even expand further eventually.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I know I have a friend who is into pack rafting, and he has sort of
Mm,
come to me and said, "Ooh, do you think we could ever get something there?" So, uh,
yeah.
I don't know.
Now, Paddle Canada, it's interesting that you talked about the history being from, someone wanting to have better information around routes and where to go and whatnot. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's not really what we do. It's really more about safety and education. So, does that piece fit into the plans for Paddle Canada at all? Because I've often thought that too. It is a lot of internet research when you're going to a new town or to find a new river or whatever it is. Has that ever been on Paddle Canada's radar to maybe track some of that information?
That's a good question. To my knowledge, I don't think so, not in recent history. I've just been with the organization for just over a year now. So as you can imagine, every day I'm learning more. So right now, sort of our mission really is to promote and educate and support paddlers. So there's sort of a couple different facets to it. There's we have our program and how do we support our instructors to deliver the program. But then there's sort of this other side that is maybe not necessarily seen by our instructor members and stuff, where it's how the world perceives us, how other paddlers come to us. So like we'll get emails often with people asking about life jacket and PFD laws, or who should they talk to if they want to learn more. I'm a director with the Canadian Safe Boating Council, so there is a big proponent to safety there, and how representing our organization and paddlers as a whole. What I'm learning is the boating community is very, very big, and that we're a very small piece of that. So I've had some interesting conversations with non-human powered boaters and how we can sort of cohabitate. So I'm learning, I'm not always just representing our instructors, I'm representing paddlers in general when people reach out to me. Which is kind of scary sometimes.
What do boaters think? That we just get in their way all the time, or?
Well, actually, no. Interestingly enough, no. I think it's the other way around. I think paddlers feel like the other boaters get in our way all the time.
Yeah, like I feel like we're constantly dodging them and trying not to get run over.
Yeah, sometimes. Anybody that I've talked to though is actually pretty open, and I've had a few conversations, and I've had boaters be like, "Oh, really? So when I do slow down, my wake doesn't always get smaller," and so I think there's just an awareness and a little bit of education to both sides, and
yeah.
You can get along.
No, I was living in British Columbia for the last 12 years. I just moved back to Ontario in August. And a student I had in an advanced flatwater course, he also had one of these e-foils. And those are fairly new to the market. So he was out on his e-foil and he was zipping around in the harbor there. And anyhow, it was either the Coast Guard actually confiscated it from him, and this is like a $16,000 piece of machinery. But it turns out that Canada doesn't have any rules or legislation around this type of craft in the waterways. So I'm not sure whatever happened to that. So that just makes me wonder with you guys, are you guys having conversations with Transport Canada or the MTO or anything like that to sort of keep that piece and keep that communication open so everyone is on the same page and up to date on laws and whatnot?
Yeah, so part of the role that I have with the Safe Boating Council, I've actually had some really interesting conversations with OPP, and I've there's one gentleman that I've been in a little bit of chatting with, and we were talking about how can we do some cross communication campaigns together to alert, I guess this is more just to bring awareness to your recreational boaters, you know, how we can all get along together out there, if you will. And then the other side is I also sit on the advisory council for the National Recreational Boating Advisory Council with Transport Canada.
Okay.
Now, that being said, I've only been to one. They have, and I think it's annual meetings.
Oh, okay.
And so the first one I went to was 2 weeks after I started this job. So I was sitting in this office in Ottawa, and I'm like, I don't know anything, but I do know that the fellow who had this position prior to me was involved in the conversations with Transport Canada that finally eliminated the bailing device for stand-up paddleboards when there was a requisite that those had to be there.
Sorry, what was it? What was required?
So when SUP first, at least here in Ontario, when it first really started becoming a thing, it was falling under the same thing as boats and all of the safety gear that they required. And for the longest time, a bailing device actually was still on the list of required safety things. And it was ridiculous. And I think he was instrumental, I believe, in having conversations at that level to demonstrate why it is unnecessary to have a bailing device on a stand-up paddleboard.
Yeah.
And then I think there was another one that we were involved with that maybe got something removed from needing, maybe it was bailers out of river kayaks. I could be wrong on that one, but that was another one. So, I mean, to answer your question, yes, we do get the opportunity to sort of sit at the table and with officials that make decisions who are not on the water paddling, understanding why some of those things don't need to be there.
Yeah, so that's great. So thanks for doing that. I'm glad I don't have to carry a bailer with me on my paddleboard. But I think a lot of stand-up paddlers who haven't taken a course might not even be aware of the safety regulations. So for anybody listening, so you know, you are required to wear a life jacket if you're paddling. If you're not wearing a life jacket, then you must have it on your craft, and you must have a tow rope in your possession. I am correct in that, right, boss?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that we're trying to, I think that there's an attempt to get through to make the leash mandated.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
I don't know
interesting.
if there's any progress on that, but I know that's another one that some people have been suggesting that it's a highly recommended piece, but it's not a legal piece of equipment.
Oh, interesting. I suppose just the leash to me has always been a no-brainer. Like I just wouldn't imagine getting on any kind of board without a leash, but oh, interesting. Okay. Leashes, not mandatory, but highly recommended. And, you know, my opinion on all this and my angle is going to be highly SUP because I'm really not very knowledgeable in terms of kayaks and canoes and things like that. So maybe tell us a bit about your background, Michelle, and what gave you the right to step into the seat of ED at Paddle Canada. You must know a thing or two about paddling.
Great, Julia. Do you want the short version or the long version?
Oh, either one. We got time.
We got time. Well, it all started. I started paddling as a kid. I like to blame it on a boy, but not in the traditional sense. My mom had a boyfriend when I was 11 who was, into the outdoors. And it actually started with skis. He would take us. So I grew up in Toronto. I grew up in Scarborough.
Okay. Yep.
Not in a world that I ever thought was going to kind of bring me to where I am, except mom dated this guy. And he used to take us on these ski trips into Algonquin, and their relationship lasted throughout the winter. So the summer rolled around and he started taking us canoeing, and I was like, whoa, this is awesome.
Oh.
And we did it crazy. We would do these we would do these canoe trips, and we would have hockey bags as our backpacks, and carrying potatoes, and washing our hair and jumping in the lake, all the things that you're not supposed to do now.
Okay.
Anyway, I think it was in grade school, grade 7 or 8, I won this principal's award where I got to go to an outdoor center for a week, and my mind was blown because all of a sudden there were these people in authority that were teaching me how to paddle, and I learned about the J stroke and why we shouldn't wash our hair and jump in the lake. And so the next trip we went on with the family, I was like, hey guys, we're doing everything wrong. And so my first students were my family. I was teaching them the things that I was taught. Anyway, long story short, you get through high school, went to college, studied outdoor rec, had been teaching canoeing and guiding canoeing for a long time. And then at some point, my husband and I got married, moved back to Kingston, started the unemployed and homeless life as newlyweds.
Okay.
And I figured that was crazy. We moved in with his brother while we figured out what we were going to do with ourselves. We had just come off a pretty neat guiding job in Algonquin Park. But we figured we should grow up we figured we needed to grow up and settle down or something.
So your husband's really into paddle sports as well?
Yeah, he works with our school board as an outdoor educator, and they do some pretty phenomenal outdoor ed program we have in Kingston here. And he went through it as a student and then as a staff, and now he's sort of in the senior management side of it. So
it's pretty super cool.
They do it. Yeah, they do anything from overnights in the summer to 30-day expeditions on the coast of Labrador.
Okay. So you were couch surfing at your brother-in-law's.
Couch surfing. Landed, I figured I needed a job quick, and retail was going to be a pretty quick and easy job to get. So I started working for a local outdoor shop. Wanted to keep teaching people how to paddle, but at the time, no one wanted to learn to canoe anymore. Everybody wanted to learn how to kayak. So I learned how to kayak, and I learned how to teach kayaking. So then I started teaching some kayaking, and then kept doing that. And then all of a sudden these boards came along, and no one wanted to learn how to kayak anymore. Everybody wanted to learn how to stand up paddleboard. So I learned how to stand up paddleboard and learned how to teach some basic stand up paddleboarding, and did that for a number of years. And last year, sort of towards the end of 2019, it was just time to make a change. I'd been doing the retail gig for a long time, bought the house, had the kids, did all the things you're supposed to do, but it was just time for a change.
Yeah.
And this position sort of came across my desk one day, and I took a chance and applied for it. Career change, and it was pretty scary, but the hiring committee at the time, I don't know, they thought I was charming enough, or there wasn't much competition, I don't know. But they chose me, and here I am.
Wow, amazing. So 2 questions for you came out of that for me was, as the new sports came about, did your love and passion for canoeing just translate right into kayaking and then translate right into SUP? Or was there ever any resistance, or did it all just come naturally for you?
It's funny, I was thinking about that the other day, as I was skiing, actually. I can remember the feeling when I first started canoeing and just being like, whoa, this is this amazing new thing. The way that you would pull the paddle through the water, and the way I could see the shore and be out in the middle of the lake. And I absolutely fell in love. And then fast forward to that first time I got into a kayak, and I was like, whoa, this is even more amazing. I'm closer to the water. I can get closer to shore because the boat was shallower, and I didn't always have to have somebody with me. Or if it was a really windy, wavy day, I could do it in a different way. And then fast forward to the first time I got on a stand-up board, which was in April in Lake Ontario. And it was also my first time wearing a dry suit. And I can remember kind of kneeling on the board and thinking, wow, this is crazy, because you can feel the water in a completely different way. And I
shakily got to standing up. And then I was like, oh my goodness, I'm standing on the water. And the grin on my face must have been just huge, and tentatively taking a few strokes and then falling off. And then that moment of, I'm in the water and it's April and I can't feel how cold or wet it is, because I was also wearing a dry suit for the first time.
Yeah.
So I think to answer the question is, I think what I've learned is the love for the paddle period translates from vessel to vessel. And I like sort of being a jack of all trades and master of none, that I can really, depending on the conditions, my mood, the time of year, I have the ability to paddle any of these. And that's pretty amazing to me.
Yeah, so it sounds like you are definitely qualified. You have the love and the passion there. So for myself, just coming back from BC though, the biggest thing I'm noticing is the paddle season is kind of over for us right now. Everything's frozen.
Yep.
So what do you do? What do you do when the lake freezes over?
Once it's safe to get out and do so, I ski it. There's a small lake across the house from me, so I'll take a lunch break and go ski around that. But my husband and my sons are avid ice fishermen.
Oh, okay.
So I am learning to enjoy and love the hard water in that way. So we get on a couple times a week and do that.
Very nice. Oh, great. What have you guys been catching?
This year, nothing.
Oh. Is it normally like
luck. Normally we do pretty good. We'll catch pike. I caught my first couple little flakes last year, so they're trout. That was fun. Perch, lots of little perch and panfish, and some year. I mean, last year was a good year. We've just had zero luck this year.
Okay. Wow. Maybe the fish have been affected by COVID too. They're staying home.
They're distancing themselves from us.
Yeah, they're socially distancing. So that transition from, now, were you like a shop manager at some point, or?
Yeah, I evolved from when I started with the shop. So I worked there for, I'm going to age myself a little bit. I was there for 18 years.
Okay.
And started out, part-time running programs, teaching courses, taking people out, and sort of eventually evolved into manager. And by the time I left, I was still doing some teaching and running events and stuff like that. But I was our head buyer. I bought apparel for a really long time.
Oh, okay. So what was that transition like then, from the for-profit world into this non-profit organization? I mean, that's a bit of that's a switch.
Yeah, it was a big switch to kind of go from my days being about how to make a buck to now a little bit more about how to save a buck or find money in creative ways, if you will. I think the biggest transition for me was more going from an environment of people around me all the time and constant interaction with people, be it customers or coworkers, to suddenly working alone, or with one other person. Then, of course, when everything shut down, it was truly going to working alone, and all of my interactions being email or Zoom based. And that's been challenging. I'm not gonna lie, as someone who is used to and accustomed to people to have days where I don't see anybody or talk to anybody.
Yeah, being in a store environment would have been a lot of hustle and bustle, and but at the time you didn't know COVID was coming, and so COVID would have really affected your retail operation anyhow. To the point where it might have been pretty similar, where you're not seeing anyone unless they're coming by for curbside pickup.
Yeah.
So the office that you and Paulo are in, do you guys actually have an office, correct? But you're just working from home during COVID? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, so we moved into just
last March, like just before this hit. We moved into one of those like co-working shared office spaces. So we had been renting previously just a small office in the back of an auto shop, actually. And then I moved us from there into this concept of the co-working environment. And my thought process there was, okay, there will be people and we could cut down on different costs. And then of course we got COVID, and well, we didn't get it, but you know, it came, it arrived, and the office building back in the spring, they kind of shut the doors, and we're like, okay, nobody come in unless you absolutely have to, while we were figuring everything out. And then in the summer I was going in, Paulo and I were going in on opposite days because it's a very small little space. So that we were keeping that distance. And now that things are open, I was going to actually go in there today to have this conversation with you, but then I got snowed in. So we're exploring this idea of, do we need to keep doing that, or should we just transition to fully operating out of our homes?
Yeah, it sort of seems like something like what you guys are doing might not even require an office.
No, it's more, we have a lot of things. We have a lot of archives, and so if I got rid of the office, I'd still need to take out probably a small storage locker. My house is very small, so I can't.
Gotcha. I like the native drum on the wall, and you got some cool stuff going on here in the background.
Oh yeah, you got the piano that nobody plays. Perfect. Yeah, my husband made the drum, actually. He took a workshop, I think, here in town.
Oh, cool.
He does some work. Yeah.
I had signed up for one of those.
A little bit.
Yeah, I'd signed up for a course like that, and then it got canceled because of COVID. So that's,
Well, fortunately, this was before that. So
yeah. So with Paddle Canada, I'm imagining that the main revenue source is it the actual courses that we're running and the fees that we pay for that? So your instructor fees and course fees is how all of that is 100% our income right now. And yeah. So then that makes me think, how are Paddle Canada's recruitment strategies going amidst this time? And, you know, how do you guys navigate that normally? Like, are you where you want to be, or what are you guys doing to expand, or anything like that?
I mean, it would be nice to have, either the more members we have and the more courses running, then our income goes up. So then what we can offer our members also would go up. So right now, I mean, I inherited this great year of my first year on the job, having the year that we just had. So I was able to reduce some operating costs here and there. So I mean, we're good in that we kind of run bare bones. We are not carrying debt. We're not throwing money around or anything like that. But trying to, we're working, our committees are working on updating our manuals and just sort of making them look a little bit better. The next step would be to continue working on translating them, but that's not an inexpensive endeavor. So if I had more income, I would be able to offer everything more in both French and English. So that's we've just finalized the first half of the sea kayak manual. So there's the second half of that needs to be done. And then just even having a lot of our regular correspondence offered in both languages. So, if we could increase our income in some way, that's one thing that I would do with it. There are some grants out there that I'm looking into. I think Heritage Canada offers some grants in helping with translations, but I think you still have to raise half the cost to do that. So that's sort of on the radar. We did recently just do a nice big change to our main website. And then our members website is sort of the next task that needs to be updated and made a little bit more user friendly. And I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that's good. So yeah, definitely bringing in more bilingual, more French speaking translation for paddling. I got it. Well, I just wanted to say, I guess I wanted to say for anybody listening, just to explain the structure a little bit about how Paddle Canada works is, so Paddle Canada essentially has skills courses. So anyone wanting to learn, let's just take stand-up paddleboarding, for example. You come, you take a basic course. From there, if you liked it, you'd come back, you'd take an advanced course. And then now you have your advanced certification. Now, if you want to become an instructor yourself, you would take a Paddle Canada instructor course, and then you could essentially teach those skills courses. And so the way Paddle Canada would make their money to keep the system going is you would charge your participants money for the course, but then you would also pay a fee to Paddle Canada to authorize that course. And the biggest benefit in my mind with doing that is that then your insurance is covered. So you don't have to worry about going out and getting your own insurance and things. So did I kind of explain that correctly?
That's how I understand it, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And I imagine it's the same thing for canoeing and kayaking?
Yeah, same sort of concept. So your course fees and your instructor fees, yeah, insurance is definitely one of the biggest benefits from a financial standpoint to instructors. And I think the other one that maybe gets lost in translation, or maybe people don't necessarily think about, is, let's say you taught a skills course and you ran 30 people through it in a summer, however many numbers. Our database keeps all of their information, so then you also don't have to keep your own records of exactly who you've put through your program and all that kind of stuff. So with our database, we keep track of everybody's certification. So if some guy needs to prove to his new employee at a camp that he did in fact take a course with you 6 years ago and he can't track you down, he can still find record of his certification through the database.
Gotcha. And maybe, I don't know if this is overlooked or not, but maybe just an extra bonus, being a Paddle Canada instructor, the pro discounts are sick.
Yeah, I'm working on more. We'll try to find more too. So
I love that. And you know what's interesting? I've actually reached out to companies before and who weren't on the pro discount, and I just tell them what I do, and I've been able to get the pro discount. So I guess it has a good standing and a good reputation in the community.
Well, and I think the community is key too. Like I've noticed, even just with social media, there's a really neat community out there of instructors that really work together to spread the stoke or get everybody excited about paddling. And they don't necessarily have to be in direct competition with one another in terms of running their businesses. A lot of folks have really figured out a way to come together and really just promote paddling for the sake of paddling and doing so safely and not for any other reason, really.
Yeah, so Emery Bozu would run the SUP Symposium annually in Tofino. And so I went there maybe 2 years ago, and yeah, just like you're saying, I was at the symposium amidst what would be perceived as my competition, like other SUP instructors from Vancouver who either had their own operation or were working for another company. And yeah, it was a place where we were all friends and learning from each other.
Yeah.
And I will say that about the Paddle Canada community anyway. I really do think that that's a pretty strong characteristic, and it's definitely supportive. I know for myself, like tomorrow evening, I have a Zoom call with a past student who wants to become an instructor, and so reached out to me to, you know, kind of find out how she could do that and whatnot. So, but I think the other important thing to remember too with Paddle Canada is that this is recreational paddling. This is not on the competitive end of things, correct?
That is true. We are not producing athletes in the understood way of the world word.
Mhm.
I mean, not to say that as paddlers we're not athletes, but we're not competing at any level anywhere. So there's another organization that takes care of that side
Yeah.
of the world of paddling.
But you would certainly have some talented people who probably are in the competitive side. Like I know one of my guests a few weeks ago, Rita Boychuk, she's quite competitive in the river surfing in the river sup world, and also a Paddle Canada instructor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know a lot of folks that compete and just paddle for fun.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So COVID-19 obviously really hit us last year. I remember we didn't know what to do. And I don't think we were running courses until, was it later in the summer, June maybe, or?
I think it depends. The way we sort of approached it is, I think it was probably end of May, early June, while we were sort of figuring out what was our responsibility, what was insurance saying, what was, like, there were so many different things to factor in. And I think we, and when I say we, the board of directors and I, when we sort of talked it all out and figured out where to go, we kind of quickly realized that it's not up to us to tell anybody that they can or cannot teach a course, because we're not a government. So we came up with this strat, and realizing that we were talking to a group of people that were spread across the country, and every region had different guidelines and different things going on wherever they were. So we developed more this concept of, okay, first you need to look at, can you operate your business in your, like, you have to look at what your local municipality and what are the local rules are. So it was more giving guidelines to folks, and I think more the answers for you to make for yourselves as instructors. Do I feel like I can offer my programs in a safe way? So that's sort of how we address that. So we kind of closed down courses for a little while, but it was definitely at a time where courses weren't really happening anyway, because it was April and May. And then a number of courses still ran out throughout the year. Like I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but we weren't, from how many courses were offered from 2019 over in 2019 versus 2020 wasn't as low. Like some people thought, oh, there were no courses running and we were down half. We were maybe down 30%.
Okay.
So I think what we saw is courses were being run smaller. So people were teaching courses with 2 or 3 people as opposed to 6 or 8. So I think that's one thing that was happening.
Okay.
And I think lower level courses where you weren't having to get into some of the intricate rescues and stuff like that really mean you have to get into each other's bubbles. So some of those higher level courses weren't running last year. That was sort of the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, so for me, I didn't run much in the spring, but I definitely went further into the fall this year than normal. But I also noticed, obviously, with COVID, was people were sticking around. People weren't allowed to travel. So I found that there was a vast interest in taking both surfing and stand-up paddleboarding courses this year. So did you find that at all with COVID? Like, did it also have a bit of that reverse effect where you may have had more interest than you imagined?
Yeah, I think we were getting some calls to the office, people looking for courses and not being able to find them because that demand was there, but there wasn't maybe as many people feeling that they could offer courses or comfortably offer courses. And then I know some instructors that were like running them all the time or trying to find staff to accommodate this increase in desire. Now, I will say that there were definitely a lot more paddlers out on the water this year, this past summer. And I think that will continue. People, I think, who got out and, bought themselves a board or a boat or whatever, and just went out on their own.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that these are people that will continue doing it. And I'm really hoping that they will seek out advice and courses and clinics on how to do so safely. Because you may know, there were lots of unfortunate situations this past year with people getting in over their head out on the water because they, didn't know what they were doing.
Because they didn't follow the 3 T's that I just saw in the video: trip planning, training, and oh damn it, what kind of instructor am I? I don't even remember the third one. Taking the essentials.
Taking the essentials.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, speaking of those videos, what's up with those like Paddle Canada promo videos that are supposed to be set back in time? Like there's like a 1920s, a 1950s, 70s, 80s. They're actually quite comical. I just watched them again before this.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what to tell you. That was well before my time. I don't know who made them. I don't know what we're supposed to do with them. They are good for a chuckle, and I mean the right messaging is there, but that would just be something. They were here when I got here.
Yeah, and they don't even really show much on the water action either.
Yeah, I think it was all part of. Were you around when the Paddle Smart program was being created?
Not created, but I've received, documents from them and whatnot.
So I think that those videos were made in conjunction with that project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I like them. They're pretty funny. They're just really jarring from the rest of Paddle Canada's videos and whatnot. They're just like, whoa, okay, that was sort of different. Now, one of the things I read today on the Paddle Canada website, which I hadn't seen before, was it said that instructors are internationally recognized. So what does that mean for us? Does that mean that we are qualified to teach courses in other areas in the world?
I think it probably just means exactly what it says, is it's recognized everywhere. Yeah. Does it mean you can teach overseas? I think it would depend. I know that we got a note from an instructor this year who is stuck in Mexico and wants to teach courses there, and insurance and everything will cover it. So okay. I know that we had instructors in New Zealand just after I started, and they had been invited over to a symposium in New Zealand to present. This was in the sea kayaking world. So again, I think that recognition is, whether or not they were handing out Paddle Canada certifications while they were there, I couldn't answer to you, but I guess that the New Zealand Association recognizes, hey, Paddle Canada has a really good program that we can learn from one another. So, and recognizing, that it's a valid certification and not just a dude from the basement certified me through his own association of paddle out of my basement or whatever. So
yeah, for sure. So we've talked a little bit about, how Paddle Canada started. We've talked about where Paddle Canada is today. So obviously the next part of this conversation is, where is Paddle Canada going? What kind of things can we watch for? What sort of irons do you guys have in the fire?
So I feel like right now, so when I started, they had just gone through a new strategic plan session and sort of put together the bare bones of what the direction was going to look like for, at the time it was a 3-year plan. And it was sort of one of the first things that I did when I got here was I looked at the rough notes from that and worked with the board to sort of put together what that
plan was actually going to look like. And then we realized that it needed to be a 5-year plan because we were already a year into it and hadn't done anything yet. So I think it was a really interesting learning process for me because it was a really good way to look at where we had come from and where we were and sort of some of the direction that we needed to go. So I think it's dialing down a little bit as to what we are at the end of the day as an organization. So how can we provide better resources and support for our instructors? So that's sort of one thing. And that could be as simple as getting everything translated. Having, I know our database isn't super user-friendly right now, so figuring out how to make that more accessible to instructors. So there's that facet, but then I think it's really about figuring out how to promote paddling to the rest of the world. We're going to take over the world with paddles. But I think really promoting this sport and bringing more bums in boats in a safe way and putting them through our instructors. So, you asked me before about what it was like sort of running a not-for-profit versus a for-profit. And it's interesting because as an organization, we're a not-for-profit, but we're supporting people in the for-profit world. Like you teach your courses and you charge for your courses. You have this skill set and you're running a business and you're running the business to pay for the mortgage or the rent or the whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it's this interesting dynamic of we're not for profit supporting a profit, which is fine. So part of my thing is if I can help spread the word that people should take courses, then in theory, I'm driving business to our instructors, but also hopefully making the world a safer place for paddling.
Yeah, that's an interesting model. I was just thinking that you are supporting us, but we're just sort of like the middleman, because at the end of the day, what you really want is people out there paddling safely. That does seem like the end goal, sort of safe paddling, and obviously, people getting that stoke or that feeling that you got the first time you got in a canoe, and learning that people can embrace that and find fulfillment out on the water.
Yeah, and it's neat how even still, this was the first year in a lot of years that I didn't do any teaching whatsoever, and got out and did a lot of paddling and a lot of canoe trips with my family. And it was neat to sort of reset myself and sort of remind myself what it is I love about paddling, and reflecting on those times where I was teaching. And I take it for granted because I have the means and the desire and the know-how to get out there and do it. And when I would have a new student, finally standing up on their board or figuring out the J stroke or whatever, that light would go on in their head, and I would get this opportunity to see it again for the first time. And I think everybody should get to experience that.
Yeah,
safely
absolutely.
And well, though.
Yeah, and I often forget, I grew up a block away from Lake Erie, so the water's always been my backyard. I've, started fishing when I was very young, so it's always been a part of my life. But it is always a wake-up call when you start a course and you get that person who's on the board and they're freaking out and they get to their knees and they run into the rocks or something. Not everyone is comfortable out on the water. So it is really interesting just to see people coming from those different places and watching them evolve and their skills evolve as well. Yeah, I know I've often wondered that too. What is it that I love so much about teaching? Why is it so fulfilling? And I think for me, at the end of the day, it's just being able to do what you love, and being paid for it is a bonus. But there's some kind of thrill out of seeing others do it as well.
And I think when you are out paddling on your own and you see somebody else, you have this instant connection to that person, even though
you don't know them from Adam, or you can tell by watching them, you don't know what you're doing, but you have this immediate little connection that I don't know that another breed of people get if you're not a paddler, if you're in a different world. I don't think you get that same thing.
Yeah, anytime I'm out on the water, paddling, surfing, whatever it is, it's definitely this sort of like tribal experience when you're with other people. You kind of share this special bond. Okay, so Michelle, before we go, is there anything that you want to tell the audience, encouraging them about Paddle Canada or to get out on the water or anything like that?
I think if you're listening here and you're not part of the Paddle Canada community, I would encourage
What's wrong with
folks
you?
to jump on the website and, I know, right? Come to the dark side. come be part of our pack.
Yeah.
I think just have a look around at the website, and I encourage you to seek out paddlers in your area. And look into courses for sure. I think safety, like, that's a common thread we've talked about a lot. And I don't know, if you're not paddling, you should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was such a lame send off. I got nothing.
It's fine, but it's a good reminder. The water is a wonderful place to be, but it can also be dangerous and can have a mind of its own. So safety is pertinent. And for those of you just jumping on a board without any thought, the great thing about a Paddle Canada course is you're not just learning the skills. We also teach you about some weather forecasting and some trip preparation and things like that should keep you safe and keep you from finding yourself in those sticky situations. So you mentioned the website, so people can learn more about Paddle Canada at paddlecanada.com, I believe. What is this, sorry? Did I get it right?
Yeah, you've got it.
Okay,
paddlecanada.com.
And now any social media or anything people can find Paddle Canada at?
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook, easy to find, Paddle Canada.
Okay, perfect, Paddle Canada. And I believe and Paddle Canada does have a store as well, right? If people want to pick up any kind of swag of any kind.
Yeah, hold on, we're working on that. Going to change up the format a little bit, so keep an eye out in the next few weeks. We're going to do some pre-orders. We're going to make up some mocks and make some hats and things like that, and do it more as of a pre-order thing.
Cool.
Get the logo out there, especially the new 50th logo that we're just running for this year. So
yeah, pretty
cool.
Going
to build some stuff based around that.
Congratulations, Michelle, on 50 years of Paddle Canada.
Thank you.
Of
only
which,
one of those.
I was going to say, of which you have been integral to 1 year.
1 year.
But in your history, though, like as the store buyer and all that stuff, and you were instructing, were you certified through Paddle Canada throughout all that time?
No, I was not actually.
Oh, well then.
That's okay. It wasn't a prerequisite of the job or anything.
No,
my certs were with the provincial, with Orca.
Oh, okay. All right. Very cool. Well, Michelle, it has been a pleasure having you here. I'm stoked that you could join us. We all know a little bit more about Paddle Canada now. And we encourage everybody out there to go to paddlecanada.com, and you can search up the courses in your area and get out there and learn how to do it safely. And it's not just paddleboarding, we're talking kayaking and canoeing. And what is maybe just before we go, what is the camping course all about?
So the camping course is sort of maybe a spin-off, if you will, from our canoe tripping program. So we had a pretty extensive tripping program certification, and I think within the last few years they realized that there was a lot of really good content in there that would transfer over to kayak tripping and sup tripping. So basically all of the curriculum was pulled out of canoe tripping. That certification was put away. And so then now there's this camping one, and you can teach it sort of as an a la carte. So you could teach a basic SUP class with the camping add-on. So then it's giving your students the tools of how to be in the backcountry. So you learn kitchen skills and tent setting skills and stuff like that. And I think there's a few different, like you can learn basic, more sort of front country stuff. You're camping with your car versus getting into the backcountry or even getting into expedition. And then if you're getting into guiding and stuff like that, so then you'll talk about group management and forecasting and route planning and stuff like that. So it's
super cool.
New. I think it's only been offered as a standalone for, this might be coming to our 3rd season that we'll be offering it. So I don't have a lot of information on how it's been received because it's still pretty relatively new, but that was the idea behind it.
I imagine it's probably pretty popular amongst the touring crowd, the kayak tours and SUP tours.
Yeah.
So with SUP, for example, we have 3 streams, I believe. We have river SUP, we have SUP surfing, and we have touring. Well, I guess you could say a 4th would be just regular flat water paddling. What are the disciplines for the other ones I'm not as familiar with? So kayaking, for example, if I wanted to take a kayaking course, is it just general kayaking skills, or what are the divisions there?
So there's your general sort of just sea kayaking skills, and there's 4 levels there. 4 skills levels, and then into your instructors. And then there is a surf.
Kayak surf course?
I think so. I should double check that. I should know this way better. The answer's always there on the website. I don't have to keep it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
by year 2, you'll know
canoeing,
everything.
There's tons.
Is there? Okay.
I know the ins and outs.
Huh.
Oh yeah, canoeing, there's like lake water, moving water, coastal, poling. Yeah.
Well, and I know most SUP courses you can do in a day. Whereas like these kayak courses, I mean, some of these they're like, what are they, weeks long, or like they take longer? I know that. How do they work?
Yeah, they take longer. Well, and I think it's just there's different skills and different conditions, and I don't want to say it's harder because I don't want to offend anybody here, but
yeah.
I think just the demands and the technical demands, and it's an older program, so it goes to a reason that there would be four different levels, and they're also addressing all kinds of different conditions in them. So in a sea kayak level 1 or basic, like you're primarily just down on flatter water, and then some of the higher skills have to do with bigger water and getting into, if you're getting into surf and currents and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first became an instructor, I came into stand-up paddleboarding through surfing. So I was surfing first, had an injury, and it's like, now what am I going to do? And so stand-up paddleboarding has been this nice sort of, tool for me to heal up and improve my surfing. But I came in as a surfer with a surfer's mindset. So I'm really like about the thrill and the zen of it all. But then you're thrown in this crowd with a bunch of kayakers, and it is pretty interesting because now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, things just got really technical and very sciencey. And there's some pretty passionate people in the kayak world, that's for sure. And if I were to go out with anybody on a tour, I'd want to go with an experienced kayaker because they certainly have a lot of knowledge. And I just want to hit those waves and ride them in. All right, Michelle, it has been awesome talking to you, and I wish you all the best in your time with Paddle Canada. And thank you for what you're doing and for, keeping the ship going straight, especially during these COVID times. And I hope to see you again on the show some other time. But in the meantime, stay stoked.
Thanks for having me. It was fun, just like you said it would be.
Awesome. Good. I told you, nothing to worry about.